Hello, I'm Travis.
And I'm David.
And we're the Game Detectives.
As we've said before in our Collectathon video, some video game genres can get pretty stale. These genres need an update every once in a while to keep things fresh.
And one of the video game genres that's been around the longest is the RPG, in particular the JRPG. Now, because it's been around so long, the JRPG has gone through a lot of different reboots, with genre-defining games such as Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VII changing what we have come to expect. But no JRPG is quite as unique as Earthbound, or Mother 2 for you hardcore gamers.
Earthbound took the JRPG and gutted it. Rather than sticking with the conventional love stories and medieval settings, Earthbound decided to switch up the formula in a big way. While I don't think it's the best game ever, and I probably even wouldn't play it again, it certainly is an important game in the development of the JRPG.
True. Although it didn't make a whole lot of money on its original release, Earthbound became a cult hit and soon had a close following, especially in Japan, leading to a sequel on the Game Boy Advance titled Mother 3.
After Ness became a character in Super Smash Bros., even more people became exposed to the character, and interest in the game became stronger. Earthbound became such a cult hit that many imitators such as Undertale began arriving on the scene. But what really makes Earthbound special?
Just in terms of basic plot and characters, Earthbound really deviates from the standard JRPG. Most of these games have teenage male protagonists who are rambunctious and active, but Ness is a silent protagonist who really doesn't do much in terms of actual dialogue.
While the silent protagonist is often used to make the player feel more like they're in the game themselves rather than a character in the story, I often felt a disconnect with Ness as a main character. He really has no defining characteristics, and he doesn't develop as a character over time. In fact, all of the main characters don't have personalities, which makes the game a little less lively and colorful.
I suppose the main reason Ness is sort of a blank canvas character is so that players can act as him in the story. He is merely an avatar for the player, much like Link or other mute main characters.
But I think it fails because the rest of the game has so much weirdness and personality that's different from a lot of games. More vibrant characters would have made the game that much more engaging.
The bland main characters stand in contrast to the very interesting and unique enemies that you see throughout the game. While there are some typical JRPG enemies like crocodiles or spiders, others like Dolly's Clock, Slimy Little Pile, and Mystical Record are so strange and different that they add depth to the enemies. Additionally, a lot of moves and actions the enemies can make, such as pouring hot coffee on your party, makes the enemies a lot more fun and engaging in combat.
Additionally, the music brings life into the game wherever you go. Whether it's in winters, summers, or the caves beneath Stonehenge, the music perfectly matches the setting, while also bringing the unique flavor of Earthbound. The music helps build the world around you, making it more inviting.
If only the dialogue was as involving as the music. Sometimes it can be pretty moving, such as near the ending, or hilarious like with Mr. Saturn. But the dialogue often falls into the trap of a lot of JRPGs, where it becomes so nauseatingly sweet that it's just cringeworthy. And a lot of the jokes really aren't all that funny. The dialogue adds a little bit of character and interest to the world around you, though.
Which is sorely needed in a combat system as basic and boring as the one Earthbound has. There are three main ways to do damage to enemies: attacking them directly, using psi attacks, and using items. You can choose how each character attacks, but there's just not enough variety in these mechanics to make a complex combat system.
It can get really boring doing the exact same thing every single battle. The standard attack is merely a physical attack, and only a select few enemies really have high defenses, meaning that you would use attack a lot. You can get stronger weapons to make you do more damage, but there's no way to power up your attack besides items.
The various items in the game can be fun though. You can use bug spray for an effective attack against bug enemies, or use a rust promoter against mechanical enemies.
But the psi attacks might have the worst design. The psi attacks you can use don't often help all that much outside of boss fights. The main offensive psi attack I would use is Rockin' and maybe Freeze, which you can spam to varying degrees of effect, but the others don't do that well. Fire doesn't deal enough damage, and Flash misses so often that they're both pretty ineffective when attacking. But there were aspects to the gameplay that actually worked pretty well. In particular, the auto-fight mechanic works well because it allows you to skip a lot of the lower level enemies you encounter by automatically having you win. You still get the experience, but you don't have to go through all the time it takes to defeat those enemies that you could easily take out in one hit.
Also, the rolling HP bar is a fun mechanic that's actually quite handy. Rather than instantly reducing your HP from an enemy hit, the rolling HP bar counts down your HP. If you're able to defeat all enemies or flee from battle before the HP rolls all the way down, the HP will stop decreasing. Additionally, you can heal an ally before their HP falls. This can potentially save your ally from fainting by stopping the HP bar before it runs out.
The strategy for combat greatly increases as you add more party members, but it's hard to look forward to that when you're stuck with just one party member for lengthy portions of the game. Introducing Jeff and Pooh with their own segments is fun, but it takes away from the fun of having multiple characters to go into battle with. Just when we were starting to get some complexity, the game takes it away.
But the most boring and annoying part of the game would be the beginning, when you play just as Ness. The first trek up the hill to the meteor acts as a good introduction to the game and its combat system. But after that, you have to go through One-It, get it? It starts with one, and through Tucson, almost all by yourself before you even meet Paula.
You spend a good 3 hours in the beginning of the game by yourself, but you could have easily gone 1 hour with Ness just to learn the basics before adding Paula and the others. By spending so much time with just Ness, the game can get really boring and repetitive and turn both of us away from continuing on with the game initially.
Overall, the game has a really tough time with pacing. You get to the first Your Sanctuary location pretty early in the game, but a lot of the Your Sanctuary locations that follow aren't necessary to keep going. You can easily miss them, or you can come back later when it's a whole lot easier to defeat these bosses.
Additionally, the Your Sanctuary locations aren't very well spaced out, with half of them located in the back quarter of the game. While they could build up a sense of expectation and urgency near the end, the Your Sanctuary locations could be used better in the middle by spacing them out more easily and making them benchmarks to test your skills. Too many of the bosses are easily disposed of once you get more members on your team.
Inventory items can be a problem too. First of all, you don't have a lot of inventory slots, which might not be the worst thing in the world, but there are some items, like the pencil eraser, that you don't know when you'll need them. Others, like some of Jeff's guns, can't be sold or thrown out even though they're basic weapons, and the Soundstone can't be moved out of your inventory at all.
As we build up to the final boss fight, expectations are running high. You have to be transferred into a robotic suit, which, it kind of comes out of nowhere, to travel into the past and defeat Gygus. Then you have to fight the hardest enemies and travel some very intestine-looking pathways until you finally reach the final boss in all of its, glory.
You meet your rival Pokey, who, for some reason that's never really explained, got in cahoots with Gygus or Gigas or whatever. You fight both him and Gygus, and the battle starts off as you would normally expect. Gygus is invincible as long as Pokey is there, so you have to get rid of him and his arachnid machine first.
But when you fight Gygus on his own, the boss battle just turns weird. Gygus begins screaming Ness's name, he turns into what looks suspiciously like an evil baby army, and he becomes impervious to all of your attacks. What can you possibly do?
You can pray to all the people you've met on your journey to finish off Gygus once and for all. Or ninth and for all. You have to pray 9 times in order to finish him off while still staying alive. This really cuts off any momentum you had going through the boss fight because you just need to focus on keeping Paula alive and having her pray, rather than using a strategy to defeat the bad guy.
It's an interesting idea, but it doesn't turn out well because you have to pray so many times. If we would just have had to pray once, it would have been cool. But after watching 9 cutscenes in the middle of a boss fight, it just gets repetitive. The Gygus boss fight is really unique, but it fails to stick the landing by having pacing problems yet again.
Overall, there are some good things about the game. The music, the enemies, and some of the characters are pretty interesting, and add some charm to the game, making Earthbound unique from a lot of JRPGs of the time, and also from any game in general.
But it just doesn't function well enough as a game to truly justify the cult classic status it has. Even though it gets more complex as you gain more party members, the combat system is too basic and gets really repetitive after a while. While it does have some quirk and charm, it doesn't really have a solid enough combat system, inventory system, or pacing to be a truly great game. So that's our analysis of Earthbound. Do you like it, or is it just another one of those cult hits that's not really anything special?
Let us know in the comments.